All right, everybody. I am doing a little setup and new update video for the Foliage tool. It is no longer going to be called Foliage Swap. It is now going to be called Swap Core. Um, as people were getting confused, this is just swap logic. I have tried to maintain as much universality as possible, but since each system is different, it is very difficult to do. But I think I've gotten most tools that most people will need to be able to do this. And as I evaluate and test with other systems, I will be adding um, more into the system to be able to make sure that I can provide as much universality as possible. There is no other logic in this system. You do have to have your own blueprints and everything that spawn in to interact with, whether it's harvestable, if it's a pickup, or whatever the case may be. There has been some improvements to the data table that we use. Um, this is a reflection-based type thing. So if you're using a narrative pro um, type actor, which I'm using for the demonstration at the moment and setup of the system, it uses a melee weapon item. Don't mind my subclass of it, but it uses their melee weapon item as the object base in their pickup, which is really nice. So we've got the demo sword and just the item pickup actor mesh name. That is all you need to set up here. Besides, if you wanted to tweak any of these other settings here, respawn and all of that. Now on the character, you've got to set up the data table here for the data table that you're creating to map what goes where. For the reflection-based type, this has to be what the function name is for the system you're using. So the initializing, the class, and the quantity. This is going to be different in every system. I cannot give you a generic one. You will have to find what those are in your system if you want to use it this way. The default per blueprint per mesh is still an acceptable way, and I can do a tutorial on doing this if you would like also, which we may be able to streamline this a little bit better in the future as well to make it a little bit more automated, but as of now, a separate blueprint to the mesh will work correctly as long as you have a separate blueprint per mesh. We have also added in a data table option, and how this would work is I do have a blueprint project in here that I was testing with too. Let's just item data, and we can open this up, and you want to grab the row name, this matters, and you put it right there, and then you can set your quantity. And so how you would use this is I'm not using it, but you would click on the Foliage Swap component, and then you would go on payload harvested. So this is where it gets all the information from. So you would come off of here and you would do an is valid, and then if it is valid, we would cast to pick up item, BP pickup item, which is what the blueprint system that I'm using uses. And and then you could get however that is set up in there. You would need to, this one I believe was make slot info, and then we needed to make or break s slot info. No, hold on. Make data table row handle. I am sorry. And then you would plug in the data table from here and the row name from here. And then you could set slot. That's not the right way. We need to set slot. I apologize. We needed to, give me just a second. Let me look at my reference that I had because now I'm drawing a blank and I apologize for that. Not off that one. Set item info. There we go. Set item info. You would drag it to there. You would set this, and then you would just be set static mesh. Or a skeletal mesh if that's what it was. I have not added in a skeleton mesh option, but I am working on that. And then you would just take your mesh from here or skeletal mesh once I get that wired up, and it would work here. And then from here you can do your own logic. But this would get it working with a data table. I do believe I am missing an invalid call, which is here. Oops. And I apologize for having to look at notes. I have been testing this nonstop with different systems to make sure that it will work. You also need to plug in the quantity to here. If you have that, I mean, hopefully your count in your slot info that you have has this. The unfortunate part is I cannot make this part editable because it is from a C++ struct. This data table is not editable unless you want to dive into the C++ code. And you guys are more than welcome to. But as of the time being, this is the way that it's got to be. And you can do whatever you need to from here. Like you can definitely, you know, if you had another data table or something, you could link it into here as well. But as I have already got a little demonstration set up with a Narrative Pro item, I will go over this. This is a static mesh, is what I am using currently. And a couple things that you've got to make sure if you're using a static mesh is you've got to make sure that the mobility is set to movable and that the collision is set to block all. And then on the foliage swap component, you've got to at least have world static for the foliage place meshes. And if you want to use a static mesh, it has to be a world dynamic mesh. That is the unfortunate requirements for this. And then we still have all of our settings that have already previously been there. So we'll do a little test on this. As you can see, this is a static mesh, no blueprint or anything. Not playing any tricks on nobody here. And we will walk up to it, and now I can pick up that mesh. and it's set on a 5-second respawn, and there it is. And you can set this up however you need to. You can set the respawn up on a chance, so it may not always respawn back as you would, like it to. Um, I've really put a lot of work into this update here for this, so I really hope that it has improved for some users that were experiencing problems. I plan on pushing this out to Fab as an update as soon as the sell is over. If you have any questions or concerns, any certain system that is not working, let me know and I will dig into it. The problem is I do not have every system, so I cannot make sure that it will work flawlessly for every system, but I will do my best to make it um, the best that I can. I unfortunately cannot inject every system's types into this. Um, so as I'm trying to maintain universality. But I will do everything in my power that I can to make sure that we can use it, and if not, I will help you come up with a solution to be able to use it. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoy my products. I'm releasing 2 brand new ones here pretty soon also. Thank you. Bye-bye.